Welcome back to Maple Row Dairy in Saranac, Michigan. 2 years ago, we awarded Maple Row the 1998 Parlor of the Year, and that award focused on outstanding production, more cows per man-hour than anywhere in the country and more milk harvested per man-hour. It also set a milestone so we had a comparison for the future. And it put the spotlight exactly where the spotlight should be, and that's right here in the milking parlor, measuring productivity and efficiency. And here we are again, 2 years later. In 1998, Maple Row was milking 1,100 cows, harvesting 5,321 pounds of milk per man-hour. Today, Maple Row is going to be milking right around 1,400 cows. We're not sure of their production, but we'll find that out at the end of this shift. The results you're going to see today are the results of excellent management, a team of milkers who know that they can, and more importantly, want to milk alone in a double 24 parlor. And you're going to see the results of well-trained cows coming into the parlor totally unassisted, and consistency. Consistency day in and day out. The cows and the milkers have no surprises. So let's meet Leon and get the shift started. Leon, good morning. You're ready to milk the cows this morning?
Yeah. And so here we are, almost exactly 2 years later from our first visit to Hardy Dairy. At the time they were milking about 1,100 cows, and I tell you, all of us, the people at Germania, the dealership, the milkers, the owners, we were quite convinced that they could not do much better than 1,100 cows in 6.5, 7 hours with one man through double 24 parlor. And guess what? Here we are. Today they're milking maybe 1,400 cows, roughly, give or take. I think, come to think of it, 1,360 cows today or something like that. In about 6.5 to 7 hours we'll find out, probably bringing in something around 6,000 pounds of milk per man hour. We'll also find that out at the end of this tape once the shift is over. The question obviously is, how are they managing? How are they getting it done? Now, I can give you my opinion, and I will give you my opinion, but really we got to ask the owners, Mark and John, later on, get their perspective, because, to be honest, I don't know what happened. The way I see it, the dairy settled in. You know, the owner said, one man is it. At the same time, we have to milk more cows, so deal with it. And that's what happened over the last 2 years. They simply became better, smoother, swifter. Okay, let's watch them. I'll step out of the picture. You watch what's going on. I'll give you a little bit of running commentary, and maybe we'll learn something. All right, cows are leaving on the right-hand side. Way in the back there is Mario. Cows are pretty much coming in by themselves. In this case, Mario is taking the first cow forward. The other cows are following him in pretty much on their own. Interesting, as so many times in these parlors, he's in no particular hurry. After all, a couple of hundred cows per hour, what's the big deal? Okay, there's the first cow. And the standard Germania milking routine that they faithfully practice at this dairy is pre-dipping 12 cows. Okay, all the cows are there, amazingly so. Oops, yeah, one of them was a little bit slow right there. You heard him hit the spray gun onto the curb, hang the hose up, walk forward. There's a couple of cows he's going to give some oxytocin. All right, there was one of them right there. Reload with fresh towels. And wipe and attach. By the way, they use cloth towels, semi-moist. I don't think they run these through the dryer. They just run them in the washing machine. They have a commercial washing machine here. Wash them, use a little bit of chlorine, spin them dry, and then use them. Why? They drape real nice over the hand, and certainly they clean extremely good. So it's a nice system, although you ought to keep track of bacteria. In other words, I would recommend that you test the towels once in a while just to make sure that they're bacteria free. Mario is attaching the 8th machine. We're running the clock here on the lower right hand corner so you can keep track of how much time it has taken. Okay, that's the 12th machine. And let's pre-dip the next 12 cows. Hopefully they're all in. What he'll probably do is when he gets to the rear end, he'll close the entrance gate. Let's just see whether he can see pushing the button. Yes, one is a little bit slower there. Okay. Close the entrance gate, hang the hose up, come forward, wipe and attach. And as you can see here, Mario, by the way, is very good at attaching the teat cups crosswise. Kitty corner. Very fast. Then you're gonna have a One thing I should explain, by the way, the tape we made 2 years ago shows the entire background to this story in excruciating detail. The entire philosophy of milking this way, we call it the profound productivity system. And so it'll give way more details and insights than what you're getting here. This is going to be a relatively short tape, maybe 20, 25 minutes or so. Okay, we are done attaching on the right hand side, 24 cows milking. Mario takes the pre-dip hose, crosses over, now becomes a post-dip hose, and he post-dips forward. There's a brisket up button right there, one cow is still milking. Amazing, isn't it? This is the cow he attached first, and she's still milking at pretty good speed. So far she has given 45.5 pounds. Times 3, I bet you she's going to come in at 150 pounds at the rate she's going. And then again, maybe not. Okay, while he's waiting for that cow, there's not much Mario can do other than play with the water hose. This is good, gives him a little bit of a break. Take a breather. Okay, there she comes off. 45 3/4 of a pound. Roughly 145 pounds, 142 pounds per day. All right, one other one. Oh, still milking back there. Okay, it's unfortunate. Right now he's got to make that extra trip. This is the higher producing string. And so some of the cows back there take a little bit longer. So this time he opens the brisket bar from back there. Brisket bar goes up. And out they go. Mark, here we are. After about 2 years, we were here, about 6 or 9 months after you started milking on this new dairy, and made the original tape. At the time, you were milking 1,100 cows. And I distinctly remember, I don't know whether we were sitting around or standing around, but I know the three of us, John, you and I, talked about, you know, where do we go from here? 1,100 cows, that's a tremendous accomplishment with one guy, you know. And so I remember that John had some real doubts that we could do better than that, you know. And I was sort of undecided, and you were reasonably optimistic, but that was a big, wide open question at the time. So here we are, 24 months later, and you guys are milking another 300 cows, exactly the same labor. And question is, how did you get here? How is it possible?
Well, the original goal, John's original goal, was to get to 1,600 cows. Could you run it with 2 people in a parlor? We didn't know. Today, we're still running it with 1 person in the parlor, and the milkers said that they could do it. So we give them a little incentive, give them a little challenge, and this is where we stand today. We're milking 1,360, 1,400 cows through the parlor and getting the job done and doing a good job.
What's the highest number you ever have milked on this dairy?
1,405.
Okay, so in a nutshell, you got from 1,100 cows to 1,400 cows, 1 cow at a time. Is
Basically.
that right?
Yeah.
Just sort of keep putting them through there, and gradually, and here you are. I mean, it was just amazing. I mean, you probably know, and you and I have talked about that, that the world out there never believed the system when you guys were milking 1,100 cows, and they're certainly not going to milk 1,400 cows, but then nevertheless, here it is, right? Mark, on turnover, you know, we can say the guys are working hard, they're not working hard, that's all a matter of personal opinion. First of all, in your, as the manager, as their supervisor, in your opinion, how hard are they working?
Well, they've got to stay moving. You know, by no means are they standing around in there, but there's never been a complaint that the guys that I have on staff right now, as a milk technician, that they can't handle the job.
You couldn't point to certain milkers that you had, and then they quit and they said, this is too hard and I can't do it and I want to do it. And
I've never had a guy leave for that reason. Never because they couldn't handle the job in the parlor.
Yeah. By the way, what's your my count up and down? I mean, today and throughout the year.
We're normally around 165, 175,000.
Okay. What's the highest and the lowest you've ever been at?
I think the highest in the last few months was probably 225. We've been as low as 125.
Okay, pretty good range. Very appropriate question at this point is, you are obviously growing, right? You grew from 1,100 to 1,400. You're not done yet because you have the freestyle ones, right? They go for 1,600. What's going to happen in the parlor from here on out as you keep going up?
Well, I'll just make another challenge to the milkers and see how far they can go.
Good way to look at it. We made a tape 2 years ago, part of the Maple Road Dairy, a couple thousand copies, which we shipped nationwide and really worldwide, you know. So you guys are very, very well-known dairy, and the dairy community in America certainly is aware of this place. You know, what has absolutely amazed me, that not a single dairy anywhere has come even close to the productivity that you guys are getting out of this parlor. And so a logical question is, why not? What is so special about this place that other dairymen couldn't duplicate?
A lot of it starts right in the main, right up in the front office with Jim and John themselves. I mean, they've always stressed teamwork. I mean, everybody from, calf technicians to feed technicians and milk technicians. We're all on the same team here, and you give them the incentive to do it, and they get the job done.
Mm-hmm. Good way to put it, Mark, if I may add my own 5 cents worth into it.
it is top management. That, you know, you already said Jim and John, and then certainly you are part of in charge of the day-to-day operation, in charge of the milkers. And ultimately, it comes down really as top management, first-class management. That's what it is, you know. And so, anyway, it's very impressive.
Thank you.
I'm amazed at what you have accomplished. It's going to be interesting to stay in touch with you and see what you will accomplish. I mean, life is nowhere yet, so we'll be back every so often and keep track of you guys.
Okay, it's the end of milking and brisket bar up, and that ends the morning shift. Okay, we're watching the milk go up very slowly. So the key question is, how much milk was harvested in 7 hours and 3 minutes? It's at 58 and 20. Okay, on the calibration chart, it's 58, 20, which is 41,036. In just 7 hours and 3 minutes, Mario and Leon, with their split shift, milked 1,367 cows and harvested 5,821 pounds of milk per man-hour. Average cows per man-hour was 194. And the daily average 88.5 pounds. Now that's outstanding performance and results. Wouldn't you agree? Congratulations, Maple Row Dairy and their team of milkers. If you'd like to hear the entire Maple Row story, continue watching. It's right here on video for you. Welcome to Maple Row Dairy, the third dairy to receive the award of Parlor of the Year. In 1995, we awarded the Parlor of the Year to Off House Dairy, located in Batavia, New York, where Ray Shutt milked 159 cows and harvested 3,568 pounds of milk per man-hour. In 1996, we awarded Parlor of the Year to Table Rock in Cast Isle, New York, where Lorraine Livergood milked 158 cows per man-hour and harvested 4,035 pounds of milk. Today at Maple Row Dairy, which is located midway between Grand Rapids and Lansing, Michigan, we're not sure how many pounds of milk will be harvested per man-hour, nor how many cows will be milked per hour. We have with us today John Hardy, one of the owners of the dairy, Mark Alderank, their herdsman, Miguel and Fidel Ramirez, the milkers, and Rolf, who will be your commentator for the remainder of the project.
You moved to this barn with how many cows, John?
There was
On day one when you started milking.
right around 700 milking cows.
And today, this is 18 months later. How long ago did you move in here?
February 7th of 97, so it's been 13 months.
Okay. And you milk how many cows today?
Right around 1100, 1080 to 1120.
So you grew by 400 cows in about a year or so.
Yeah.
Phenomenal growth rate. John, how do you pay your milkers?
By the hour.
Oh, is that right?
Start out around 9 and they can work up to 1150
Oh, yeah.
eventually. Yeah.
Okay, and then benefits, retirement program, probably not, right? Or
Retirement,
or
they get
is
a
there
retirement.
Health insurance,
Health insurance.
vacations?
Paid vacations.
And then 2 days off out of 6.
2 out of 6, and 3 paid personal days and 2 paid sick days.
We're ready to start milking this morning, but before we go into the parlor and see Miguel, let's take a look at the milk tank and see just how much milk we have in the tank. We're right at 13.4, and that calculates to 5,916 pounds. So that's what we're starting at this morning. And now let's go into the parlor and see if Miguel's ready to get started. Good morning, Miguel.
Morning.
Are you ready to milk cows this morning?
Yes.
Very good. You're looking really sharp in that white uniform today. It looks like your cows are ready too. What side are you going to load first?
I'm going to start on this side. I usually start on this side all the time.
Okay, so we're going to start over on the left side, and I'll tell you what we're going to do. You just go forward, and as soon as you hit entrance gate open, that's when we're going to check the clock and we'll start the milking.
Okay.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
The time now is 5:06 and 25 seconds.
This is our third Parlor of the year. And the logical question would be, why this special award? Well, it's because we want to recognize outstanding performance. Look, if John Hardy, who is clearly one of the best managers of the country at this time, if he can milk with his crews and his people and through his leadership, if he can milk more cows per man hour and harvest more milk per man hour, by golly, we ought to recognize it. That's number one. Number two, we want to set a milestone. In other words, what is outstanding performance? 100 cows an hour, 50 cows an hour, 200 cows an hour? Well, it's somewhere in between. And so we may as well, every so often, record one of these operations so all of us know where we are and where we might be going from here on out. Also, with this project, we want to put the spotlight on productivity and efficiency in the milking parlor. After all, what is there? Yes, udder health, and we'll talk about that as we go along. Milker comfort, we'll talk about that as we go along. But ultimately, when it comes to your pocketbook, productivity and efficiency, that's what it's all about. Let's highlight it. And finally, we want to put a little bit of a challenge out there. Now, John Hardy is a darn good manager, no doubt about it. But he's not the only one. And there's no doubt that if he can milk 170, 180 cows an hour, whatever it may be, 6 hours from now, so can you. How is it possible? How do they do it? When it comes right down to it, quite simple. A very large parlor, a very good operator, and a sharp owner. In a way, not much different than that 350, 400 horsepower John Deere rig we see running up and down the fields. In other words, productivity has to do with tools. Certainly you could go out there and plow that 1,000 acres with a spade. It would take you a couple of years to get it done. You could also go out there with a 15 horsepower tractor. It would take you a couple of summers to get it done. But you give that guy a 500 horsepower engine. Hey, same thing here. You give a sharp operator 48 machines and watch him go to town. And that's what we're going to do all morning. But there's one other element, and that is that the owner and his milking crew have to work together very, very well. This is a cooperative relationship. This productivity is not possible without it. In other words, John and his milkers have to sit down. They do, by the way, regularly. Every couple, 2-3 weeks, they have a milker meeting where they talk about this. The question is always the same. How can we make the job easier for you? How can we make the job more efficient for you? How can we milk a few more cows in the available time? For example, one idea they came up with quite a few months ago is how about we split the shift? Now here we clearly have one operator. However, he never leaves the milking parlor. He is here for about 3 hours straight when he milks the first 3 groups. Outside is a herdsman, if that's what you want to call him. He's also a milker, and he scrapes the alleys, cleans the waterers, brings the cows in, rakes the beds, and so on. But that's a relatively easy job out there. After about 3 hours, he comes in, becomes the milker, and Miguel here behind us, he goes out and takes care of that. By the way, we have discussed of maybe doing it on every group. John hasn't done it yet, but that's sort of in the background. As they're going to milk even more cows, maybe 1,200, 1,300 cows, they'll probably shift milkers every group. One milker comes in, milks his cows, 150, 200 or so, then goes out and takes a break for an hour looking after the work in the freestall barn. Now before we even move on here and look at all the details, I know there's one burning question on your mind, and that is, how much might a parlor like this cost? Without going into details at this point, let me take the conclusion from the end of this tape and give it to you right here. This is the lowest cost parlor of any and all. If we measure cost in terms of pennies per hundredweight, and I'll give you the details later. How do they do it? Clearly it has to do with 48 machines. Good way to think about it is like a 500 horsepower engine with 48 cylinders all firing at the same time. But you see, just like on that rig out there we talked about earlier, the engine alone is no good. I mean, you need a whole bunch of things to go with it. We have the same thing here. In other words, out there you need the insecticide injector, the herbicide dispensers, you need the global positioning system, precision farming, put the right stuff where it belongs at the right time in the right manner. We have exactly the same thing here. Matter of fact, we are talking about 12 elements, 12 points, management considerations, equipment considerations, milking routine considerations. There is 12 elements that have to come together just right to make this kind of productivity possible. Let's look at them in just a minute. One thing I like to point out, if you can manage to put these 12 elements together, what you end up with is what we like to call a profoundly productive parlor. Your operation sort of kicks in on this principle of profound productivity. It's almost like a whole new way of life in the milking parlor. And I mean that. Watch Miguel right there. Now that is not milking in the traditional sense, okay? This is a whole new way of life. Let's look at it in detail. Let me give you a quick over on what equipment he is working with here. In other words, what tools does he have at his disposal? First, there's a crowd gate. Obviously, we got to have a crowd gate. Doesn't work without it. Second, he works with what we call the automatically sequenced cow traffic system, where the brisket bar goes up automatically after he pushes the button. It stays up there for only a couple of seconds, comes down automatically, entrance gate opens automatically, and the crowd gate starts running forward automatically. As the cows enter the parlor, the brisket bar is already pre-indexed, and that was Miguel's decision. That's his choice. You can operate that many different ways. For attaching, he uses arm takeoffs, which gives him a number of benefits, but for that phase of his work, it helps him attach appreciably faster. Once the last machine comes off, the brisket bar obviously functions as an all-exit device. In this case, we get rid of 24 cows in about 6 to 8 seconds. There's a milk meter. In this case, that's the upper milk meter to keep him help him keep track of production. That helps the milker's productivity only with premature detach. In other words, for a cow for some reason another held the milk meter will give him a warning and say, hey, we got a little bit less milk than we expected. Do you want to reattach or do you want to let her go? And that's his decision. Certainly we need automatic cow ID. Without that, the entire computerization is not much good. We have automatic mastitis detection where we measure the conductivity, and that gives Miguel a warning sign if there's a cow that's not quite up to snuff. But what helps his productivity is that eliminates the force stripping. In other words, no priming, no force stripping in this barn, and that is a great time saver. Finally, There's automatic heat detection with the individual ID. That does not help Miguel with productivity. That's for the herdsman in the back, so he keeps track of which cows are in heat at any given time. A minute ago, we talked about these 12 elements of profound productivity. Assuming for a second that you were to adapt all 12 of these elements like John Hardy did, in summary form, what could you expect? What would you get out of it at the end of the day? First of all, without saying, tremendous productivity. One guy, 48 machines, maybe 180 cows, 160 cows an hour we have to see. Second, highest production per cow. Now, I realize high production doesn't come just from milking them right. It has to do with genetics and with feeding. But good milking contributes to highest production per cow. And these herds that are on the principle of profound productivity, 80, 85, and up to 90 pounds per cow average is the rule. Cows entering on their own. In other words, if you milk productivity, profound productivity style, the hassle of chasing cows in the parlor is over with once and for all, and I'll explain that in detail in just a minute. Absolute consistent milking. This is a smooth parlor. Smooth and swift, absolute consistent milking. And therefore, no stress on the operator, nor on the cows, no stress. Lowest somatic cell counts. In concrete terms, make that 80 to 200 in that range. Most of these parlors are right between 100 to 150,000 SCCs. Shortest machine on times. And we have to explain why that is. Why do we get the shorter machine on times with this principle? Therefore, good teat ends, okay? Not that we're saying perfect teat ends on all cows, but on average, you'll end up with better teat ends milking this way than any other way. And because there is no stress either on the operator or on the cows, there's reduced kicking. With less kicking, there's fewer injuries for all practical purposes. In parlors that milk profound productivity style, there are no injuries because the cows simply don't kick. Difficult to believe, but I'll come back to that. Okay? And certainly, last but not least, because the cows are less nervous, or for that matter, not nervous at all, there is reduced crapping. There are fewer cow pies on the platform by the time we are all done. In a short summary, those are the benefits of milking profound productivity style. We have milked about 3 groups. On the right-hand side are the last few cows. I would estimate maybe 20 of them, 18 of group number 3. Miguel just attached the last cow. He will be taking both of these groups out and back to the freestall barn. Fidel is coming in, and he'll be milking group number 4, 5, and 6. And there he is, with 2 gloves. Why do you put 2 gloves on, Fidel?
Sometimes one broke too easy.
Tears.
So I have to come back, you know.
Okay, great. You like those?
Oh, yeah.
Keeps your hands nice and clean, right?
Yeah.
Ready to go. And while we talked about gloves, clearly understood as far as we are concerned, in these kind of parlors, the gloves they are wearing are absolutely mandatory. Interesting enough, I'd never seen the milker putting 2 sets on at once, but it makes sense because we have heard about the gloves tearing, and so 2 of them last them a little bit longer. Also, I want you to take a look at the strange towel holders. They were put together, literally invented on this dairy. John has a brother, his name is Jim, an older brother who is not part of the dairy, but Jim is a little bit of an engineering talent. And Jim noticed that the milkers did not have enough room in the previous towel holders to hold 24 clean towels in one pocket and 24 dirty towels in the other one. So he went to work, and it took him about a couple, 3-4 days, and he had developed that very nice towel holders. Milkers like it, and it works. And it obviously helps their productivity, because here we don't want towel baskets and buckets and whatever throughout the pit, because these towel inventories get in the way of the milker.
Okay, Mark, Miguel just finished his shift, and now Fidel's up there. Can you tell us how many cows Miguel milked during his shift?
Yes, Charmaine. 545 cows. They yielded 17,768 pounds of milk, which comes out to 32.6 pounds per cow.
Okay, very good. And you think that Fidel will get as much milk as Miguel got?
Hopefully he will. Normally he gets a little bit more.
Okay, and why is that?
I think it's in his prepping procedures and stimulation of the cows.
All right, real good. As far as the milkers here, you're in charge of the milkers?
Yes.
And who trains them?
I'll work with them a little bit, and then basically I'll have Miguel work with most everybody that comes through to train on this shift.
And how long does it take to actually train a milker to the point that you're satisfied?
We'll give them a 2-week period to get them broke in and get them used to milking by themselves.
Okay, and does everybody work out, or do you have some that just don't measure
Some
out?
don't work out.
Okay, it's just too much work for them in this size parlor?
I don't really think it's that. I think that they're really not cow people. They're just not made for milking cows. Some people aren't.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much, and we'll come back at the end of the shift and find out what Fidel does.
Okay.
Just a couple of minutes ago, we talked about what goes into this profound productivity or this kind of parlor operation behind us. Let's review these elements, those 12 elements that are absolutely essential to make this possible. Point one, this takes enlightened management. It takes truly dedicated people like John and Mark who make up their mind this can work and this will work, and no matter what it takes, we will make this work. You see, that kind of concentration and dedication is necessary, as you can imagine, because as you fire a parlor like this up, imagine the skeptics on the dairy, the neighbors, the university, the local consulting veterinarian, all of them will tell you, not possible, can't be done. The manager and his team have to make up their mind, this can work, and by golly, this will work, and no matter what bottlenecks and what roadblocks, and no matter what we run into, it may take us 3 months and it may take us 2 years, but we will make this work. Next, it takes motivated milkers. Talking to Mark, some of them can do it, some of them clearly can't. And that's how it goes when we are talking about a high performance job. This takes a milker who says, it's a challenge, I want to tackle this, I can do this. And maybe it's going to take me a little bit of practice, and maybe it's going to take me getting used to, and maybe I have to learn the routine a couple of times over. But this is the kind of job I can do, I want to do, and by golly, give me a little bit of time and I will do it. Can't do it without motivated milkers. The third essential element to make this possible is clearly understood. We need clean cows into the holding pen. Freestall management, freestall design, planning, construction, all the magic is gone. We know how to construct freestalls, how to design them, and certainly how to manage them to give us clean cows into the holding pen. We don't have clean cows, we have nothing. I mean, other washing in this parlor, forget it. Number 4 essential element, and this one may strike you as a bit different. The Hardys sorted their herd to a degree. Now, for my taste, I wish they would sort them even more. We strongly recommend sort out all your hard milking cows, lame cows, blown bags, three-titters, kickers, anything that does not fit the uniform, standard, smooth-flowing pattern of cows into this parlor. If she doesn't fit, get rid of her. Now, there's two ways to do that, certainly. You can sell her to the neighbor for a discount, or you can form a separate group. That's a management decision. As far as I'm concerned, and I'm not a dairyman, so what do I know? My recommendation would be get rid of them. Milk clean, standard, uniform, Holstein cows that sort of fit in here. After all, this is a money-making production line. This is an assembly line. And as much as you may like those cows that have been in the family 30 years worth of genetics, all that is nice and wonderful, and if you like and love those cows so much, then by all means take them and milk them into a little side opener, extension barn, separate. Maybe that's what ought to be done, but as far as we are concerned, this is a money maker. Only standard uniform cows that fit the pattern will make you money in this parlor. Now let's talk about equipment a little bit. Clearly, you need an all-exit herringbone. Now, all-exit, in other words, it's old hat. They have been around for some 10, 12 years or so, because you need to get rid of those 24 cows in those 6 to 8 seconds, which is standard with all-exit barns. We shouldn't even talk about trying to thread 24 cows through the exit gate in the front. It's a nuisance. It's not possible. End of discussion. The sixth essential element is the holding pen. Well planned, well put together, with a crowd gate, fully automatic if at all possible, a well thought out transition area between the holding pen and the milking parlor. Those things are essential. We want the cows to watch, the cows that are waiting in the holding pen, we want them to watch what's going on in the parlor, anticipating, so to speak, what's going to happen next, mentally get ready for being milked, and certainly when the entrance gate finally opens, to readily march in. No obstructions, no hindrances, well put together holding pen and transition area into the parlor. Number 7 essential element, and this is the first truly big one. Unassisted cow traffic into the parlor. Now I'm tempted to say totally unassisted cow traffic into the parlor. But if you watch long enough on this tape, you'll see the milker walk up the ramp occasionally, and even very rarely, but nevertheless occasionally, into the holding pen to just encourage the cows a little bit. But for all practical purposes, we have totally unassisted cow traffic into the parlor. Specifically, the entrance gate opens as part of the automatically sequenced cow traffic system. The cows walk in. There's a wide open platform with the Germania brisket bar. There's nothing in front of them, so they have a totally unobstructed view where they are going. There's no guessing what might be ahead. They know where they're going. They can see where they're going, which obviously helps them to walk in more readily and more willingly. Understood? The milker never goes into the holding pen. Now that sort of contradicts what I just said, but I want you to get the spirit of it, not so much the letter of it. For all practical purposes, the milker never goes into the holding pen. He just doesn't. And understood, there is the rare exception. The reason it is so extremely important that the cows come into the parlor on their own, not assisted by the milker, is that they get to choose their choice of when they want to come in the parlor, which side they want to be milked on, which stall they want to be milked on, way in the front, way in the back, somewhere in the middle. I hate that bloody entrance gate. I hate the exit gate. I love it in stall number 17. That kind of thinking. And certainly, in a way, choose the neighbor they want to be milked next to. Now, there's not enough time on the tape to give you story over story and proof over proof that that is indeed what the cows are doing. if you have milked cows in a parlor and successfully so for any number of weeks, months, or years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The cows choose the time they want to be milked, the stall they want to be milked in, the site they want to be milked in, the neighbor they want to be milked next to, and it's all very simple. It's called a habit. They're coming in here 3 times a day, 1,100 times a year. They have habits. I like to be milked this way. As long as you, the milker, don't bother me and don't get me all mixed up and all flustered, then that is how I'm going to get milked. The milker instead waits in the back, at least in this parlor. By the way, there's a better routine yet, but let's just stay with this parlor. The milker goes into the back when the entrance gate opens, takes the first 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cows forward, and you can see that here, encourages them a little bit. The moment the first cow arrives in position in stall number 1, he starts pre-dipping. Bottom line, from the time he pushes the button, brisket bar up, to the time he pushes the button on the first machine back on the first cow, maybe 30 to 45 to 60 seconds have gone by. He is back in business and done with the complete cow traffic cycle in about, let's just say, 45 seconds or so. Now, I'm not saying all 24 cows back on the platform in 45 seconds. That's obviously a nuisance. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's not a nuisance. That would be great if he could do it, but it's not possible. But he's back in business, milking cows, so to speak, in less than a minute. Point 8, number 8 essential element is automatic indexing. Obviously, this only works, this being swift attaching. Swift attaching only works if every udder is right there. When the milker gets there, the udder has to be there. Without indexing, you know what happens. You get those small heifers, 2, 3 next to each other, and before you know it, a couple of udders are hiding behind a couple of other cows. You can't reach them. It's a nuisance, doesn't work, forget about it. Automatic indexing is essential. 9th essential element that we cannot do without, and this is the second big one in the series. We need Germania arm takeoffs. Why are they so essential? Let's see how they're supporting this kind of productivity. First of all, the milker attaches much faster. Now, there are 2 reasons for that. Number 1, the claw is already well presented to him. Not like in normal milking parlors, parallels with rope takeoffs, for example, where the claw hangs this way and that way, and the milker has to go ahead and turn it upside down, turn it right side up, and sort the tit cups out. Here, the claw hangs well presented. All he has to do is push the button, guide the claw out there. Once again, he does not touch the arm, he does not touch the claw, he just guides the claw out there and flips on 2 and 2 tit cups. In other words, he attaches appreciably faster with arm takeoffs than with no arm takeoffs. Secondly, there is, for all practical purposes, no squawking and there are no fall-offs. Now let's examine that. You see, in a barn like this, double 24, you can imagine when the milker's on the other end, there is no way for him to see or hear what happens to the machines in the front here. And therefore, if he would have the normal ratio of squawking and fall-offs that you get in, for example, a parallel barn, it's not possible. You need a second man to just keep track of that. In this case, the arm supports the weight of the claw and the teat cups. Weight of the claw and the teat cups is not on the udder. And when the milker is done attaching these teat cups to this cow, he is done with this cow. He pays no longer any attention to that. That's how it works, or at least that's how it works most of the time. Let's be realistic. Even in this barn, very occasionally, let's say we get an extra large udder, there is a squawking tit cup. When it happens, 2 choices. Either the milker hears it and sees it by pure coincidence, in which case he does correct it, or he does not see it or hear it, in which case he ignores it, and that cow in that quarter may well go out only partially milked. Now, that may be sort of disagreeable to you, but always keep in mind the results that they are getting here, John and Mark. And his father, Jim, by the way, was very much part of the party. 85 to 90 pounds of milk per cow per day average, 100, 120, 150 somatic cell count. For all practical purposes, good T-dens, tremendous productivity on the part of the milker. What else can you ask for? Next, we train the milker. Now when we say we, that is the Germania Parlor specialist team, the dealer, the owners, all together. We train the milker to have a focus during the milking. What do we mean? You see, when the cows are coming in, the milker has one focus and one focus only. I need to get the first machine back onto the first cow. In other words, when the cows are leaving, when the cows are coming in, all we can hope is sort of for the best, namely, all we can hope for is for swift cow traffic, and the milker goes with the flow without getting the cows all flustered and mixed up. But he has this concentration. I've got to get the first machine back onto the first cow, because he knows that unless the machines are on the cows, really nothing much is happening here as far as business is concerned. Okay? That's his first focus. The moment the first machine is back onto the first cow, he immediately now has a second focus. And that is, he now has to get the last machine back on to the last cow. What we are saying to the milker is, the moment you have a cow in the first stall, get to her and start milking. Right there. When you have the first machine on, get the last machine on. In other words, don't doodle and dawdle. Don't get sidetracked. Don't start messing around, whatever you want to call it. All right? Get the first machine on, get the last machine on. Now let me tell you what's in between there. You see, this is a herringbone with arm takeoffs. In other words, there is no, for all practical purposes, squawking, and there are no fall-offs. If this were a parallel, he can't concentrate on getting the first machine on, and he can't concentrate on getting the last machine on, because he has to keep an eye on the other 24 machines over on the other side to make sure he catches those squawking titcups and the fallen off machines. In other words, he cannot fall into a smooth, predictable, swift, relaxed routine. He always has to worry about those other 24 machines. In this barn, when those 24 machines are milking, he is done with them. He can concentrate on first machine on, last machine on. Only possible with arm takeoffs. Number 11 essential element to make all of this possible: a well-established, well-practiced, high-quality milking routine. I know when you first got this tape, you already knew that A, for one milker to milk 24, double 24, 48 machines, 6,000 pounds per hour, or whatever they're going to get here eventually, is not possible. And if it is possible, you came to the automatic conclusion it's only possible by them milking low-producing cow and milking them in a shorty manner. In other words, they hoodle through it. An absolutely essential element of making this possible is a high-quality milking routine. What do we mean by that? We pre-dip every cow. We wipe all 4 teats, and we attach the machines. That's understood. At the end, we post-dip every teat of every cow. And you can see that in this barn is done very, very carefully. Now, this is an essential discussion, because we're beginning to hear and have heard that in other parlors, well, we can milk 150 and 200 cows an hour by automating pre-dipping and post-dipping. Friends, pre-dipping and post-dipping is a system that Germania has available. All other milking machine manufacturers have it too. And you hear almost nothing about it because the system, yes, can dip teats, but cannot dip them in a high-quality manner. It has to do with spraying. If you try to spray the teats, either you get the same tit dip usage as you would here, but since it is divided over the entire udder in a spray pattern, you get lousy tit coverage, or you say, I must get the same tit coverage, but then since you get it over the entire udder, you use 4, 5, 6 times as much tit dip. There's the reason why automatic tit dipping hasn't worked. In other words, those dairymen, those operations, those parlors who are accepting that kind of tit dip are making a sacrifice, in our opinion. Individual decision, perfectly acceptable if that's what you want. But let me turn that around. If we were to install automatic pre and post dipping with spraying in this barn, you know how much to what the productivity would go up to? We are looking at 200 and 300, 250 and 300 cows an hour, just like that. Imagine this milker coming up front. All he has to do now is to touch machine. That's the only thing left. This parlor would really smoke if he didn't have to pre and post dip manually. But that's a separate discussion. Let's not go into too much detail. The point is, a high quality milking routine is essential. Now, one other aspect of this high quality, well practiced milking routine, and this is the fun part. What's happening behind us, I almost like to use the analogy of a gear drive. In other words, the cows are coming in an absolute predictable pattern. The milker is operating in an absolute predictable pattern. The equipment performs absolute reliable. You take those three elements and what you get is the cows and the milker meeting at the same time, in the same place, and in the same manner all day long. The cows and the milker and the equipment are working like this. It's a predictable, totally known, fixed way of operating this parlor. Right back to our engine. This is a 500 horsepower, 48-cylinder engine that just sort of hums. And finally, number 12 essential element to make all of this possible is tremendous attention to detail on everybody who is involved with this. The owners, the managers, the milkers, the dealer, us Germania, all of us working together, have to work together to pay tremendous attention to the details. Let me give you some examples. When we started this parlor up a year ago, 13 months ago, it was milking with 2 people, and it was milking with 2 people for about 3-4 months. We then discussed of maybe switching over to 1, several milker meetings, and we asked them what's going right, what's not going right, what would you like to see improved in order for you to operate those 48 machines with just 1 person. And bingo, 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 here come the suggestions. For example, tit dip hoses. 2 milkers, they had 2 tit dip hoses. When they switched to 1, they kept the 2 tit dip hoses. Believe it or not, that second tit dip hose was messing the milkers up. They insisted that we take it out. Now it's running smooth. Here's another example. Special button on the upper milk control box. There's a green start button. Unfortunately, this is sort of a flat panel. You can't feel where that button is. So the milkers are saying, in order to push that green button, we have to look at the panel, and then we can look at the machine, and that's costing us a fraction of a second, and we would rather not do that. So Jim Hardy, oldest son, John's brother, said, well, let me get to work on that. And sure enough, after a few hours of bending some metal and finding some parts in the machine shop back there, he came up with a button that attaches to the control box without special tools, and wonder over wonder, now the milkers can walk up here and they don't have to look at the button in order to operate it. Minor point, you bet, and it makes a great difference in the productivity of this parlor. We already talked about the towel holders. Before we started milking with one man, we had different towel holders that required barrels and buckets for clean towels and dirty towels throughout the pit. Not good. The milker said we need something better. We need to be able to carry 24 towels all the way back there. Jim Hardy came up with it. Minor element like milk and pulsation hoses right here. When we started milking, these hoses, number one, went up into the machine and came back down, were obstructing the working space for the milker a little bit, but also they were just a tad too long, and the milkers pointed that out. They say, look, the hoses are too long, and every so often the cow in front of this cow gets her feet tangled up. And we don't have the time to untangle hoses. Milk and pulsation hoses not being properly tied together was one of those points. The milkers pointed that out. They say we want the pulsation hose and the milk hose tied together and not twisted and not tangled. All 48 machines. So first of all, we brought the milk hose down. We don't bring the milk up into the machine anymore. We now just bring it over the curve directly into the milk meter. We have the shortest possible milk hose. They are not tangled, not twisted, and it's just working like so. There were 3-4 other points like that the milkers brought up. Believe it or not, this morning, while we are recording this tape, Miguel stepped over at one point and said, Rolf, I need an additional button in the front of the parlor so I can stop and start my crowd gate without having to make an extra trip in the back. The moment he said it, it hits me. He's absolutely right. And why did we not notice that before? Well, it's a very minor point, but it is those minor points. It is that attention to detail that makes this kind of productivity possible, or at least contributes to it appreciably. Those are the 12 essential elements. Now, in conclusion, let me try to put it all together. You see, that is why there is no stress on the cows. If the milker doesn't go in the holding pen, they come in by themselves. Life is totally predictable. Therefore, no stress. If there's no stress, there's no adrenaline in the udder, in the body, in the bloodstream, and therefore all of the oxytocin gets to the udder where it can do its good work. And that's why we then get the best possible letdown and the fastest possible milk out and the shortest possible machine on times. And that's why we get complete milk out, putting it all together. No stress, no adrenaline, oxytocin going to work. And then certainly with shortest possible machine on times, we also get a little bit better T-dance. This absolute consistency comes from the arm takeoffs. We get the consistency because the milker can concentrate, first cow to last cow. And because he can concentrate, his operation is swift and smooth and totally predictable. Therefore, no surprises to the cows. They know exactly where the milker is. They know exactly what's going to happen when and how and why for that matter. And therefore, no kicking. By the way, all the time you watch this tape, have you seen a single canned kick in this barn? It doesn't exist, one lonesome milker by himself, not a single can kick. And you have not seen a single cow kicking. Now this tape you're watching, we don't know how long it will be, but let's just say it's 90 minutes long. As you can imagine, with doing a couple of retakes here and there, we have been standing here with the cows from minute first to minute last. It is now 10 minutes to 11. We are just about done milking. For the last 6 hours we have been with the cows, in a way making a certain kind of commotion. Not a single cow, not one cow out of 1,050 kicked this morning. Why not? Life is totally predictable. They come into the parlor, they know where the milker is, they know what's going to happen when and in which manner, no kicking. Therefore, friends, that is why there are no injuries in this barn. What are we talking about? Parallel versus herringbone. There are fewer injuries in a parallel. We've got it sort of backwards, okay? If we force cows into a barn, if we go into the holding pen, if they are confused, if they don't know what's going to happen next, certainly they're going to kick in the flat barn, in the stanchion barn, in the parallel barn, in the herringbone. But let's not kid ourselves. There is no kicking, at least not in this barn. One man operated, with arm takeoffs, totally predictable. No surprises, no kicking, no injuries. And that's why. And then certainly easier to find help. Let's not go over it again, but you remember friendly working conditions. This facility is so spanking clean, it can compete with any restaurant kitchen and probably win the competition. And any hospital, hands down and flat out. This is a clean, sparkling, well-lit, comfortable, well-ventilated, well-cooled, well-heated food processing facility where we have one well-trained, well-supervised milker who is doing a dynamite of a job, and he knows it, he gets paid accordingly. Finding help for this facility, they are lining up and almost literally outside the office asking for a job here. Clearly understood, after a few months, more likely after a couple of years, herds that milk profound productivity style sort of become standardized. We talked about that a little earlier. How does it happen? Well, maybe the owner does make a decision and he does ask the milkers, please identify these odd cows so we can get them the dickens out of here. But you know what happens in most of these parlors? Owner doesn't have to say anything. The milkers do it either consciously or unconsciously. You see, he's got to look after 32, 40, 48 machines. This boy is busy. And you know what? Any cow that doesn't fit the pattern, when he gets there to post-dip, that cow better be ready to post-dip. If the cow doesn't fit the pattern, the milker, conscientiously or unconscientiously, he sort of ignores her a little bit, you know, hoping that maybe she gets mastitis tomorrow, and then the next day she'll be gone. And now take everything that we have talked about on this tape together. And what do we have? We call it profound productivity. Profoundly productive parlors. Real money makers. And maybe we should call it a whole new way of life. Put it all together, this has nothing to do with milking cows the traditional ways in America. This is a milk-producing factory, a real moneymaker, a whole new way of life. At the beginning of the tape, I promised you we would come back to cost. I said that this is the lowest, by far the lowest cost of any facility. And that is correct. How much does it cost as an initial investment? I already told you, I don't know. $500,000 at rock bottom minimum, depending certainly how many stalls, what equipment, what quality construction you want to use. But let's just say a minimum of 500 and very well could be costing $1 million, somewhere in between. A couple of years ago, Dave Galton and a couple of graduate students studied the question of how much does it cost to produce milk on a per hundredweight basis if you are milking through a very low cost, $25,000 total investment flat barn, and maybe through a small, middle of the road, not so special equipment, double-eight herringbone, and maybe a somewhat larger, average, mediocre equipment, double 16 parallel, and maybe through a heavy-duty super parlor like this. And how much does it cost? Wonder over wonder. This parlor did not come in only marginally less expensive, but significantly less expensive. By the time they put together investment, depreciation, cost of labor, efficiency, whatever, and the paper, by the way, is available. Matter of fact, now that we're talking about it, we'll include a copy with this tape. And you'll have it right there. If you leaf through that paper real carefully, you'll see different assumptions, herd sizes in production and 2 times a day milking and 3 times a day milking. But take a look at the bottom where they're talking about cost of milking. This kind of parlor, because of the tremendous labor productivity, is coming in at about 31 cents per hundredweight if you're milking twice a day, and 45 cents per hundredweight if you're milking 3 times a day. And then look at all the other supposedly less expensive parlors on how much those are going to cost you to milk your cows. And you see all the cash you save on this end, where does it go? As far as we are concerned, right into your pocket. One other thing that I want to point out on that paper, they assumed a standard depreciation life expectancy of 15 years for the cheapest low-cost flat barn for $25,000, and including this one. That's fine with us. If they assume too many variables, they're going to go nuts with their figures. But is that reality? If a flat barn lasts for 15 years, how long will this one last? And there goes the cost of milking once again.
We have just a couple more milkers on. We're waiting for the final cows in the shift to be milked out, which will be the end of the milking for this morning. And we'll watch for Fidel to hit that brisket bar up to end the shift. Okay, Fidel just finished milking the last cow post-dipping, and it's brisket bar up, and it's the end of the shift. And the clock, the time is exactly 11:18 and 10 seconds. Way to go, Fidel. The milking shift is over, and after 6 hours and 11 minutes and milking 1,086 cows, let's take a look at the milk tank and see how much milk is in it. Checking the milk level here, we have 55.21. And looking at the chart, 38,816.
John and Jim Hardy, we want to congratulate you. You have set a new world record in productivity. Let me read you the plaque. It says, 1998 Protein Parlor of the Year, awarded to Maple Road Dairy in recognition of achievement and leadership, world record in parlor productivity, 5,321 pounds of milk per man hour, presented by Jamaica. John, congratulations. Thank you. Outstanding new world record. Hold on to the bottle for a second, Miguel. We appreciate the cooperation. That was an outstanding job. Miguel, same to you. Mark, couldn't have been done without you. All right, here's to John, Miguel, Fidel, and Mark. Congratulations.
This is the last one. This is going to be a good one. I'm now comfortable.
You're doing great, Mark. I mean, just a little bit more coaching and I'll retire and put you in front of the camera.
Put the two milkers together, both Miguel and Fidel. if it takes one of the
That is good stuff.
Let's have some more, I think.
Yes.
That's good.
Milking in a double 24 parlor, almost 1,100 cows. One of the questions that is asked over and over again, how much does the milker walk? That's a long parlor and he's got to be putting on an awful lot of miles. Let's do a quick estimate. Assuming now that the milker begins at stall number 1, ready to pre-dip the first cow, the milker makes 5 trips per group. The first trip he pre-dips. He then walks back to the first cow, so that's trip number 2. Then he goes back and wipes and attaches, and then he post-dips coming forward. That's 4 trips. For calculation's sake and giving the benefit of the doubt, let's add 1 more trip in there just because of the crossing over the pit and just odd little jobs that he's doing. So you take those 5 trips times the length of the parlor, which is 90 feet, calculates to 450 feet. Now we assume that he does 3.5 turns per hour, milking 7 groups. So take that 7 groups times 450 feet, calculates out to 3,150 feet. Each milker milks approximately 3¼ hours. So you multiply that times the 3,150 and you come up per shift 10,250 feet, which in turn calculates to 2 miles per shift. So to milk 1,100 cows, 2 shifts with 2 milkers, each walking 2 miles, that totals 4 miles.
One management technique you may want to consider to improve productivity is to even out the groups as much as possible. In this particular case, we're missing 6 cows, and obviously having these 6 units not milking makes a difference in the milk that ends up in the tank. How much difference? Anywhere between 50 pounds per man hour on smaller parlors and up to about 200 pounds per man hour in this parlor if most of the groups are uneven.